The planet Varelian Prime burned like a dying star. Great towers of glass and silver that once touched the clouds now stood broken and aflame. The royal banners of the Varelian Empire, proud and ancient, were falling one by one as explosions shook the skies. Princess Saraline Varelian, heir to the Empire, stood on the highest balcony of her citadel. From there she could see everything, the burning cities, the wreckage of her people's warships, and the dark clouds rising where once the twin suns had shone bright. Below her, the Terran expeditionary fleet was advancing. The humans had come from a far-forgotten world, a small blue planet they called Earth. The Empire had laughed at them once. They were considered weak, primitive, and small in number. But that laughter had died when the humans fought back with a strength no one had ever seen before. They didn't fight for conquest. They fought for survival, and somehow that made them unstoppable. Saraline's advisors shouted orders across the command deck. "Your Highness, we must evacuate!" The humans have broken through the outer defenses, but the princess didn't move. Her golden eyes watched the sky filled with falling ships. How could they come this far? She whispered softly. How could they defeat an empire older than their world itself? An old general knelt before her. His armor was scratched, his voice desperate. "Your Highness, please. The royal ship is ready. We can still save you." But before she could answer, the citadel trembled. A blast ripped through the lower walls, throwing soldiers off their feet. The lights flickered. Smoke and dust filled the air. Then from the shadows came a strange voice. "That's your problem," it said calmly. "You keep underestimating us." The soldiers turned, raising their weapons. There, standing among the rubble, was a man, his armor torn, his face dirty with ash, and one arm bleeding. He was human. The guards shouted and aimed their blasters, but the man didn't move. He looked directly at Saraline. "You're the princess, aren't you?" he said, breathing hard. "The one they said was leading all this?" "Who are you?" she demanded. "Captain Elias Trent," he replied, standing tall even in defeat. "Terran Infantry, 7th Division." The general barked an order, and the human was surrounded instantly. He didn't fight back. He simply raised his hands, eyes steady. "Kill him," one of the officers said. "He's the enemy." But Saraline lifted a hand. "No," she said quietly. "Bring him to the throne room." The next hour passed in chaos. The fortress shook with each bombardment from orbit. The humans were close to victory now, but Saraline couldn't leave. Something about the human soldiers' calm defiance caught her attention. When they brought Elias before her, he was forced to his knees, wrists bound with glowing restraints. His helmet was gone, revealing dark hair and eyes that burned with quiet strength. "Tell me," Saraline said, pacing before him. "Why do your people fight so hard? You are outnumbered, outmatched, yet you continue." Elias lifted his head. "Because we don't quit," he said simply. The princess frowned. "You must know you'll lose." "Maybe," he replied. "But losing and giving up aren't the same thing." The word struck her in a way no weapon could. He was not speaking like a conqueror or a soldier, but like someone who truly believed in something. Her general interrupted. "He's dangerous, my lady. Execute him now before the humans reach the citadel." But Saraline raised a hand again. "Take him to the dungeon," she ordered. "Do not harm him. I will speak to him later." As the guards dragged Elias away, the princess stared after him. Something deep inside her, something she didn't understand, was changing. Hours later, night fell. The bombardment stopped for a while, but the air was still heavy with smoke. Saraline couldn't sleep. She kept hearing his words echo in her mind. "We don't quit." Finally, she left her chambers, wearing a dark cloak to hide her royal armor, and walked down to the lowest levels of the citadel. The corridors were quiet, guarded by tired soldiers who bowed when she passed. When she reached the dungeon, 2 guards stood outside a glowing energy cell. Inside sat the human, head bowed, his hands still bound. "Leave us," she told the guards. "My lady, that's an order." When they were gone, she stepped closer to the cell. "You're still awake," she said. Elias looked up slowly. "Kind of hard to sleep when the world's ending." She tilted her head. "You don't fear death?" "I've seen it enough times," he said. "It's not what scares me." "Then what does?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Failing, giving up. Letting the people who believe in me down." The princess studied him through the energy field. His body was weak, yet his eyes were alive with fire. She had seen countless warriors, but none like him. "You humans," she said quietly. You fight without logic, even when you have no chance. Yeah, Elias said with a small chuckle. That's kind of our thing. Why? She pressed. Why throw yourselves into impossible fights? Because someone has to try, he said simply. If nobody does, then nothing ever changes. For a long moment, Saraline said nothing. Outside, the thunder of war echoed faintly through the walls. Finally, she whispered, Your people have destroyed much of mine. And yours destroyed ours, Elias said softly. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? To prove we're not monsters, he said. To show that even when everything burns, there's still hope. Something flickered inside her chest, a strange warmth she had never felt before. Suddenly, alarms blared through the citadel. The lights flickered red. Over the intercom, voices shouted, The Terrans are breaching the east wall. We need reinforcements. The ground shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Elias looked up at the sound, then back at Saraline. You should go, he said. It's not safe here, but she didn't move. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she saw not an enemy but a being made of sheer willpower. Why do you care if I'm safe? She asked. He shrugged slightly. Because that's what we do. We help whoever we can. Her heart tightened. It didn't make sense. The humans were supposed to be the enemy. Wild, dangerous, unrefined. Yet this man, this one soldier, was showing more strength than her whole army. The intercom crackled again. Princess, you must reach the evacuation chamber. The citadel will fall. But she couldn't move. She looked once more at Elias, who was now standing, gripping the energy field between them as if testing its strength. Sparks jumped from the barrier. Don't, she said sharply. That field will kill you, he smiled faintly. Worth a shot. You're insane, she said. Maybe, he answered, but sometimes the impossible just needs someone crazy enough to try. Then the lights went out. A deep hum filled the air. Sparks danced along the cell walls as power surged and failed. Somewhere deep below, the citadel's generators were failing. The energy field around his cell flickered once, twice, then vanished. Elias stumbled forward, free at last. Saraline stared at him in disbelief. How? He raised a small device made of wires and metal scraps. Borrowed some parts from the security panel, he said simply. You'd be surprised what you can fix with nothing. The entire dungeon shook again. The walls cracked. The roar of explosions came closer. The guards returned, shouting in panic. Your Highness, we have to leave now. Forget the prisoner. But as they tried to pull her away, Saraline turned back toward the human. He was limping toward the corridor, helping another wounded soldier out of a broken cell. Leave him, the guards cried. He's doomed. But Saraline didn't move. She watched as Elias dragged the man to safety, smoke and dust swirling around them. His body was battered, his armor torn, but he didn't stop. Not once. In that moment, she understood. This was what made humans dangerous. Not their weapons, not their technology, but their refusal to give up, even when the universe told them to. The princess whispered almost to herself, Impossible. And yet she stayed, watching the human do the impossible. Smoke still filled the corridors of the fallen citadel. The explosions had stopped for a moment, but the silence that followed felt even louder. Princess Saraline Varelian stood among the ruins of her once grand palace, her mind a storm of confusion. The human, Captain Elias Trent, had escaped. No, not escaped. He had earned his way out, breaking the energy field with nothing but a few scraps of metal and a will that refused to bend. Her soldiers searched the lower levels, shouting orders, dragging wounded comrades to safety. They asked her to return to the command ship. They begged her to leave before the humans overran the planet. But Saraline didn't move. She stood by the shattered hallway, staring at the path where Elias had vanished with the wounded man. Her thoughts were heavy. Her heart was louder than the alarms. Who was this man? Why risk his life to save another? Why help anyone when he could have run? Her people always taught that the strong survive and the weak are left behind. That was the law of the Empire. But this human, this fragile creature, did the opposite. He stayed behind for others. That defied everything she believed in. Hours passed. The fortress groaned under the weight of its own ruins. The humans had surrounded the capital. The Empire's command network had collapsed, and yet, somewhere below, one human still fought alone. Saraline finally made her choice. She disguised herself again, wearing a dark hooded cloak and removing every royal insignia from her armor. No one needed to know who she was. She slipped through the service tunnels, guided only by the emergency lights and the distant sound of gunfire. The air was hot and full of smoke, making it hard to breathe. As she turned a corner, she saw something flicker in the shadows, a faint, blue glow. It was him. Captain Elias knelt beside a broken generator, hands covered in grease and blood. His armor was cracked, his movements slow, but his eyes burned with focus. Around him lay a few human soldiers. Injured, unconscious, maybe worse. Saraline hid behind a pillar, watching silently. He was working with the precision of a machine, connecting wires and metal shards. Sparks flashed, lighting his face. His lips moved as he spoke to himself. "Come on, just a little more," he whispered. "Don't fail me now." Then she heard the hum of power returning. The damaged lights flickered back to life, glowing faintly along the ceiling. He had done it. Somehow the human had restarted part of the power grid using nothing but broken parts. Saraline stepped out from the shadows. "You repaired the conduit," she said softly. Elias turned sharply, his hand going to his weapon, but stopped when he recognized her. "You again," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect you to follow me." She walked closer, her eyes scanning the wounded humans. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Your army is retreating. You could escape." He gave a small, tired laugh. "Escape? These men can't even walk. Someone has to keep them alive." "You'll die here," she said. "Then I'll die trying," he replied simply. The princess stared at him. There was no pride in his words, no glory. "Just truth, you're insane," she muttered. "Maybe," Elias said with a grin, "but sometimes the insane ones get things done." Suddenly the ceiling shook again. Dust fell like rain. A blast rocked the tunnel, sending debris crashing down between them. Saraline was thrown to the ground, her ears ringing. When she looked up, a massive beam had fallen, blocking the path to Elias. "Are you all right?" she shouted. "Still breathing?" He called back. Through the cracks in the debris, she saw him lift one of his injured soldiers, pulling him to safety even as the tunnel burned around them. He could barely stand, yet he moved like a man carrying the weight of the universe. Saraline tried to find another way around. She ran through a side passage, her cloak catching on jagged metal, her boots slipping on the dust-covered floor. When she reached the far end of the tunnel, she found him again. He was kneeling beside a console, trying to reroute power. Sparks jumped from the wires, lighting up the grime on his face. "What are you doing now?" she demanded. "Opening the lower escape tunnels," he said without looking up. "There are civilians trapped in the east sector." She froze. "You're helping our civilians?" "They're people," he said simply. That's reason enough. Saraline felt her throat tighten. For years her empire had called humans primitive, dangerous, unpredictable. Yet this man, this so-called savage, was saving her people at the cost of his own life. "Your own army wouldn't do this," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "That's the thing about humans. We don't wait for orders to do the right thing." Before she could respond, the power surged again. The console beeped. The lights turned green. Somewhere far below, she could hear the heavy doors of the tunnels unlocking. Elias leaned back, exhausted but smiling. "There," he said. "They have a way out now." Saraline stared at him, speechless. Minutes later, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Her guards had found her. "Your Highness," one of them cried. "You shouldn't be here. We've located the human fugitive." Elias slowly stood up, raising his hands. "Guess that's me," he said. The guards aimed their weapons. "Lower your hands. You're under arrest." But Saraline raised her voice. "Stop." The soldiers hesitated. "This human just saved hundreds of lives," she said firmly. "You will not harm him. My lady, he's the enemy. Enough," she commanded. Her voice echoed off the tunnel walls. "If you have ever followed my orders, then follow this one." The guards lowered their weapons reluctantly. Elias looked at her, surprised. "That's a dangerous thing to say in front of your men," he murmured. "I am the princess," she said. "Dangerous words are the only kind I can speak." For the first time he laughed, a quiet, tired laugh that made her lips curve into an unwilling smile. But the moment didn't last. The walls trembled again and a burst of flame erupted from the far end of the tunnel. "Fall back," shouted one of the guards. "The plasma reactors are collapsing." Elias looked around quickly. "We need to move now." He lifted one of his injured comrades and pointed toward the exit. Go, I'll hold this path open. You can't, Saraline said. You're too weak. Been worse, he said, smirking faintly. Trust me. Before she could argue, he ran forward, grabbing a broken support beam and wedging it under a falling section of ceiling. It held for a moment, just long enough for the soldiers and civilians to escape. But the strain was too much. The beam cracked. The tunnel shook again. Without thinking, Saraline rushed toward him. Elias! She shouted. He looked up at her with that same maddening calm. Told you not to come back, he said. You'll be crushed. She cried. He gave a short, breathless laugh. Not if you run faster. The ceiling gave way, but before it could collapse completely, he pushed her backward out of the path of the debris. The tunnel fell silent again, filled with dust. Saraline coughed, searching desperately through the smoke. Elias! She called. Answer me. Then she saw a figure moving through the haze. He was limping, covered in dust, but alive. He held out his arm, helping her up. Told you, he said with a grin. Humans don't die easy. She stared at him for a long time, this strange creature of stubbornness and hope. You could have escaped long ago, she said quietly. Why stay? Because someone has to make sure the others do, he answered. That's what matters. And in that moment, she understood what made humans different. They didn't fight for power or pride or empire. They fought because they cared. Because they believed. Her people had machines stronger than human tanks, weapons sharper than their blades, ships faster than their fleets. But they lacked what humans had. The courage to keep trying when everything was lost. As the two of them stood amid the ruins, the wind carrying ash and light, Saraline whispered softly. You are truly impossible. Elias smiled faintly. Yeah, he said, we get that a lot. That night, while the world burned and both armies retreated, one alien princess sat beside a wounded human soldier inside the broken halls of her own palace. She could have left. She could have escaped to the stars and forgotten all this, but she stayed. Because now she had seen it with her own eyes, what humans were made of, and she could no longer look away. The lower corridors of the citadel were silent now, except for the quiet groans of the wounded and the hum of damaged systems. Smoke still lingered in the air, making everything feel hazy and unreal. Princess Saraline Varelian stood in the middle of the rubble-strewn hall, her cloak torn and dusty, but her gaze fixed on the human soldier kneeling beside a flickering light. Captain Elias Trent had been tending to injured humans for hours. His body was bruised and bleeding, yet he moved with precision, patching wounds, adjusting broken armor, and distributing rations from what little supplies they had. Saraline watched silently. Every time one of the human soldiers attempted to rise, Elias would support them, giving instructions in calm, steady tones. Despite the destruction surrounding them, he remained unwavering, almost serene in his focus. She had followed him through smoke-filled corridors, through fire and rubble, ignoring her advisor's frantic calls for her to evacuate. Each time she saw him, he defied reason, defied the impossible. Her mind raced. She had been trained her entire life to lead armies, to make decisions with precision and logic. She had been taught that weakness meant death, that compassion was a luxury for those who already had power. Yet this human, weak in her eyes by every measure, had shown more strength in a single day than many of her generals had in their entire careers. Suddenly, a loud rumble shook the floor. Dust and small stones fell from the ceiling. Saraline stumbled but caught herself. In the distance, she could hear the distant sound of the human fleet, small ships descending toward the city, ready to rescue their remaining forces. Elias looked up, his eyes narrowing. We've got company, he muttered. Saraline moved closer. You can't hold them off, she said softly. There are too many. He'll die. He shook his head. Not if I make them survive first, he said. You can't save everyone, she pressed. The city will fall, the citizens, he interrupted, his voice firm but calm. Then I save the ones I can. That's all I can do. For a moment she was speechless. His words were so simple, yet they carried a weight far greater than any speech she had ever heard from her generals. She had to make a choice. She could leave, obey her advisors, and escape to safety, or she could stay and witness something extraordinary, something she had never imagined. The distant roar of engines grew louder. Saraline realized the human rescue fleet was already descending, but not fast enough to reach all the trapped humans before the final collapse of the citadel. She looked back at Elias, who was now lifting a wounded soldier, moving toward the damaged transport corridor. You can still leave, she said, her voice almost pleading. He looked at her, eyes tired but determined. And leave them here? No, not possible. Her heart clenched. She had been trained to make decisions for survival, for the Empire, for herself. But watching him, the bravery, the selflessness, she understood something her instructors had never taught. Sometimes survival meant doing the impossible. Sometimes leadership meant courage over caution. Then I'll stay, she whispered almost to herself. Elias didn't notice her words. He was too focused on lifting another injured soldier over rubble, but she didn't move. Instead, she removed her cloak and used her royal armor to reinforce a damaged walkway, holding it steady as he passed with a group of humans. You really shouldn't be here, he muttered, finally noticing her. And you shouldn't be trying to save everyone, she countered. Somebody has to, he said. It might as well be me. The princess studied him, her heart heavy with admiration. The humans had no empire, no fleet of thousands, yet they moved with purpose that even her empire could not match. The alarm in the citadel blared again. Fire and smoke filled the hallways as parts of the ceiling began to collapse. Saraline could see the far end of the transport corridor blocked by debris. The human fleet couldn't reach them in time. Elias looked at the blockage. We can climb over, he said, examining the rubble. It'll be tricky, but it's the only way. Saraline's breath caught. You can't, she said, shaking her head. The stones will crush you. I'll take the risk, he replied calmly. Better me than them. Her instinct screamed at her. She wanted to stop him, to pull him away, to command him to save himself. But then she realized something important. The humans did not fight for themselves, they fought for others. And that was what made them so unstoppable. I'll help, she said. His head turned toward her, surprise clear in his expression. You don't have to, he said. I want to, she said simply. We're stronger together. Elias nodded once. Together they climbed over the rubble, supporting the injured soldiers. Sparks fell from damaged lighting panels, but they moved with precision. Every step coordinated. Saraline found herself relying on him as much as he relied on her. Once they reached a safer section, the group paused. Saraline's armor was scratched and scorched, her cloak in tatters. Elias was breathing heavily, but his eyes still burned with determination. You really did come, he said quietly. I couldn't leave, she admitted. I've seen enough today to know. Humans are different. You do things we never could, he smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time we showed each other what's possible. They moved together toward the exit. Outside the citadel was a scene of chaos. Fire, smoke, and distant explosions painted the sky red and orange. The human fleet was landing, small ships dropping troops and supplies to help the remaining soldiers and civilians. Elias took the lead, guiding the group toward a damaged shuttle bay. Saraline followed, carrying what supplies she could. Each step was a reminder of the destruction, of the impossible situation they had survived. At the shuttle bay, the human rescue team was already engaged in evacuating wounded soldiers. The sight of Elias leading the group stunned them. Here was one man, injured and exhausted, moving with purpose and strength that inspired everyone around him. Captain Trent, one of the soldiers shouted. You made it! I told you, he said with a grin. Humans don't quit. Saraline observed quietly. Even here in the heart of chaos, he remained calm, focused, and unwavering. There was a dignity in his determination that no royal title, no weapon, and no army could match. She realized then that her entire understanding of power had been wrong. It wasn't technology, numbers, or wealth that made someone strong. It was courage, determination, the ability to keep going even when the universe said you couldn't. As the injured were loaded onto shuttles, a final blast shook the bay. The Citadel's core systems were failing, and a massive section of the ceiling began to collapse. Elias turned to face it. We need to move now. Saraline grabbed his arm. We go together, she said. He nodded. Together, they sprinted across the bay, dodging falling debris and helping injured soldiers to the shuttles. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Smoke filled their lungs. They reached the last shuttle just as a massive section of the ceiling fell behind them. The humans and a few remaining soldiers scrambled inside. Saraline hesitated. Elias turned, looking at her. Come on, princess, he said. No one is left behind. She stepped forward, climbing into the shuttle beside him. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, she felt a connection not based on titles or power, but on shared courage and respect. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving the burning citadel behind, Saraline gazed down at the ruins. Thousands of lives had been saved thanks to one human soldier who refused to die, and one alien princess who refused to leave. In that moment, she understood the truth of the human spirit. It was impossible to break. It was relentless, and it could change the universe. The shuttle flew through the smoky sky, carrying the wounded and the survivors. Saraline sat quietly beside Elias, watching him coordinate with the other humans. His calm authority, his focus under pressure, and his unwavering courage left her in awe. "You're remarkable," she whispered. He looked at her, surprised. "I'm just doing what I have to," he said. "Perhaps," she replied, "but the universe needs people like you." Elias smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'm lucky you decided to stay," she smiled back, quietly acknowledging that in this moment, she had learned more about courage and leadership than in all her years as a princess. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't before: hope. Not hope for the Empire, not hope for herself, but hope for what humans could do when faced with the impossible. And from where she sat, watching him, she knew that she had made the right choice. The shuttle cut through the smoky sky of Verelian Prime, leaving the ruined citadel behind. Outside, the world burned in reds and oranges. Ash floated in the air like soft snow, and distant explosions reminded the passengers that danger was never far. Princess Saraline Verelian sat beside Captain Elias Trent, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline of their escape. Around them, human soldiers moved to tend the injured and check equipment. Despite the chaos, Elias remained calm, issuing instructions in measured tones. "Are they going to follow us?" Saraline asked, her voice low. "Possibly," Elias said. "We have some time, but not much. The Citadel's collapse might trigger a chain reaction across the city. Your people, they're relentless," she said, watching the humans work together with precision even under exhaustion. "I thought only empires could organize like this." Elias smiled faintly. "Humans can organize," he said, "but more than that, we adapt. We don't stop trying just because the situation looks impossible." Saraline considered his words. She had led fleets of ships, armies of soldiers, and still, she had never seen such determination in one being. One human, one captain. The shuttle approached the lower orbital platform, a small landing zone left intact in the chaos. Elias guided the remaining humans to safety while Saraline helped carry supplies. The wind howled around them, carrying smoke, fire, and ash. The world felt like it was ending, but the humans refused to stop moving. Suddenly, the shuttle shuddered violently. Alarms blared. One of the engines was damaged, likely from debris or residual firestorms. Elias tightened his grip on the controls. "Hold on. We're not crashing today." The princess assisted him, adjusting panels and reinforcing circuits with parts she had salvaged from the Citadel. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes steady. "We always make it," he said. "We just find a way." And in that moment, Saraline realized the truth. The humans didn't wait for miracles, they created them. Hours passed. The shuttle glided through magnetic storms and debris fields, testing the limits of their damaged craft. Supplies were low, fuel almost gone, and communication with Earth was nearly impossible. Yet Elias refused to give up. He turned scraps of technology into makeshift navigation systems, rerouted damaged power to maintain life support, and even jury-rigged a signal beacon using Verelian crystal circuits. Saraline watched in awe as he worked tirelessly, combining human ingenuity with sheer willpower. "Why do you do all this?" she asked during a brief pause. He didn't look up. "Because someone has to. Someone has to make sure the people behind us survive. That's what humans do." She remained silent. Her own people had destroyed cities in the name of power. Yet here was one human preserving life in the face of near-certain death. The beacon finally activated, a glowing pulse of light cutting through the storm outside. "It's sending!" Elias shouted. "It's working." Saraline peered at the readout. The signal carried a hybrid message, a human distress code combined with encrypted Verelian coordinates. It was brilliant. "It was impossible. Elias, you're sending a message into the storm," she said quietly. "Do you realize what this means?" He shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "It means help will come. That's enough for me." Outside, the storm raged, tearing at the shuttle. Lightning struck nearby wreckage. Debris collided with their hull. Every system creaked and groaned, but the shuttle remained in the air. And the humans inside? They refused to panic. They moved as one, working together. Even wounded soldiers assisted when they could, offering steady hands, instructions, and encouragement. Elias led them with calm authority, a captain of impossible courage. Saraline could feel herself changing. She had been trained to rule with strategy and fear, but here she saw that true leadership came from hope, from courage, and from the willingness to risk everything for others. By the next day, the shuttle reached a safer orbital corridor. Other human ships responded to the beacon. Small transports appeared in the distance carrying reinforcements, supplies, and medical teams. Elias guided the shuttle to dock with one of the rescue vessels. "We're not done yet," he said. "We get everyone on board, then we move for the safe zone." Saraline helped the injured onto the rescue ships, assisting where she could. She no longer felt like a princess of an empire. She felt like part of something greater, a team that refused to quit no matter the odds. When the last of the wounded were loaded, she turned to Elias. "You didn't have to stay," she said softly. "You could have saved yourself." "I could have," he admitted. "But that's not who we are. Humans don't leave others behind." For the first time, Saraline truly understood the human spirit. It was not in weapons or fleets, not in numbers or technology, but in determination, courage, and an unwillingness to surrender. As the fleet departed Verelian Prime, leaving the burning world behind, Saraline and Elias stood side by side on the observation deck of the lead ship. Below them, the Empire was crumbling. Above them, stars stretched endlessly. "You really changed the way I see everything," she said quietly. Elias smiled faintly. "That's what humans do. We make people believe the impossible is possible." Saraline looked out at the endless night of space and realized that the universe itself had no limits, only the courage of those willing to push beyond them, and she was ready to follow. Weeks later, the story of the human and the alien princess spread across worlds, not through propaganda, not through conquest, but through actions that inspired everyone who heard them. Captain Elias Trent had not only survived impossible odds, but had saved countless lives. Princess Saraline Verelian, once ruler of 1,000 worlds, had defied her own empire to help him. Together, they had proven that courage, hope, and determination were stronger than any fleet or army. Across the galaxy, soldiers paused. Leaders reconsidered their strategies. Ordinary beings found inspiration in a story that could have been impossible, but wasn't. Back on the lead ship, Saraline and Elias stood side by side, overlooking the fleet. Humans and aliens alike moved together, building a new alliance born of mutual respect and courage. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stayed?" Elias asked quietly. She smiled. "I don't think about what could have been, only what is. And what is that we can do more together than we ever could apart." He nodded. "You're right. We showed them what's possible, not with weapons, but with courage." The princess watched as children, human and alien, played together in the ship's corridors, laughing and learning from each other. She felt something she had never felt before, hope that was stronger than fear, courage that could inspire the universe, and friendship that transcended worlds. "Do you think the Empire will forgive me?" she asked. "Doesn't matter," Elias said. "You didn't do this for forgiveness. You did it for what was right." Saraline nodded. "Then it was worth it." The fleet moved through the stars, leaving the shadow of Verelian Prime behind. The humans had proven themselves in ways no one could deny. The princess had seen it firsthand, and she knew one truth above all. The universe rewards courage, determination, and hope. In the heart of the endless night, a human soldier and an alien princess had done the impossible, and the universe was watching. Elias turned to her and smiled. "So what now?" Saraline looked out at the stars, eyes shining. Now we show the universe what humans, and those brave enough to stand with them, can do." And together, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face any challenge, to save any life, and to inspire every corner of the galaxy. Because they had already proven one unshakable truth: when humans refuse to quit, the impossible becomes inevitable.